Hey, how you guys doing? This is Neil, the art instructor at masterpaintnow.com and Udemy, where you can find tons of other free drawing videos, drawing lessons, painting lessons, Photoshop, you name it. All about drawing and painting and stuff, comic book and all that kind of stuff. I sorry I haven't, put out videos in a little while. I've been kind of slacking on that. I just been really busy with working on the, how to draw backgrounds course. Well, really it's more about how to draw and paint environments for both painting, concept art, and comic stuff like that. I've also just gotten into RC racing. But anyway, this video is going to be about how to paint trees. It's actually for my paid channel, but I thought I'd go ahead and put it on here as well so you guys can see what kind of videos are going on to the paid channel. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to paint some trees. And how do you paint, well, not necessarily trees, but a tree, maybe some leaves. How do you paint that and simplify it? What do you think about when you want the light coming through the leaves? How do you make that happen? I'm going to show you some really cool tips and tricks on how to do that. First, we're going to do is start with like a bright yellow background, and then we'll move from there. Before we get started, though, I want to just mention one thing. RC racing the last 2 months has really taken up a lot of my time. I'm really loving the sport or hobby, whatever you want to call it. I'm taking it as a sport. That's how I want to do it. Um, yeah, so far I've taken first place, taken several second places, and just novice right now, novice racing. But still, yeah, so that's where I'm at right now. I just took first place last Thursday, and I've only been doing it for 2 months. Well, the first month was bashing, so not really racing. The second month, I started actually going to tracks and practicing racing buggies, and loving it. My low C22, that's what I took first place with. So let's get started here. For those that actually care about that kind of stuff, that's what I've been up to. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use a soft brush here. So in this case, it's going to be the airbrush. Notice up here, I have it set to, you can have it set to shadow. There's all these different things you can have it set to. Maybe even set to stronger or soft. I like, this is good, use soft, size 300 brush or so. Then I'm going to take a lighter color, almost white here. And I'm going to start putting in where I want my sun to be. So let's say I want my sun to be somewhere around here. That's where the sun's going to be. Then I'm going to kind of lightly touch with the brush here. In this case, it's not an actual brush, but if you're painting, with an actual brush, then this would be a brush. I'm going to use absolute white for the very, very middle here. And then I'm going to use a really, really yellow tone here, actually. And then I'm going to go back to white just a little bit. Now I'm going to go to, let's see here, the mode. And we're going to do add glow for the drop down for the combine mode here. And just kind of bring it out like that. And that's going to be the background layer. So this will be the layer, the sky basically that's showing through. Now there's not really any blue in the sky. What I might do though is maybe try to start adding a little bit of blue to the sky here, to the very edges. Although this close up, the way we're going to be drawing this picture, I don't think much blue would even show at all. But I'll go and add a little bit, which it actually look more greenish. So I'm going to kind of just, it's going to mix in with the yellow because I'm just very lightly touching it. Anyway, so for those of you that are using brushes, it's kind of the same technique. Now I know you can't really see what I'm doing here with this Cintiq, but I'm just lightly touching my pen to the canvas or to the Cintiq tablet, or if you're using a regular tablet like a Intuos or something like that, you just lightly touch it, very, very lightly. You're hardly touching it at all. And this is going to be the background here, a little bit of green like that. That's going to be the background sky. I think I'm going to add a little bit more yellow orange out here, and I want to stick with bright colors, actually, bright saturated colors, and like so. So it's going to be a little bit of blue, but I don't want too much there, so something like that. All right, the next thing to do is make a new layer. I like to keep my background layer when I'm working this kind of work separate, so I'm going to make a new layer, in this case rasterized layer. I have no reason to have it saved as vector. So now I need I like to put in my foreground here. You can also put in midground too if you have some midground trees and things like that. And maybe I'll actually have some midground leaves or trees like in the background, like maybe we're looking at a tree here in the foreground, but we have some mid bushes or something in the background here. So I'm going to kind of lay in that color. For that, I'm going to use the paintbrush here under watercolor, transparent watercolor. I really like this brush for painting. It works really great. Replaces my typical brush that I would use in Photoshop. Here's the settings for it here. If you want to see what they are, just pause the video and look at that. I'm going to pick kind of a yellowish green color here. I'm going to kind of start with maybe a green. and then maybe add some yellow to it. And I'm just going to quickly, and I like to start with big brushes first and work my way up to larger brushes. Just kind of lay out this basic shape here. And this right here is going to represent the area of those mid bushes. Maybe I have a little bit darker color down in here, like so. I like to have the colors kind of overlap here just a little bit, and that already starts to add a little bit of texture to what I got going on here. Then I can come here. There's two different ways I can do this, and I'm going to show you one trick I like to do. So let's go ahead and make our brush smaller now, maybe a size 40 or so. And I don't like to zoom in when I'm working. I like to see everything I'm doing here. We can always zoom in later if we want to make it a more detailed, non-like speed painting. What I like to do now is maybe take some of this yellow color here, and that's as I hold down the Alt key, and it switches to my color picker. You can also just choose the color picker tool here. That's obviously going to be much slower though. And just kind of start brushing in little textures, like kind of like little parts of the bushes, because you're simplifying here in your mind. You know that really these are all like individual leaves and things like that, but that's not what you're going to see. So imagine the whole bush as a volume, and as a volume, that bush has a bunch of shape to it. Now I'm taking the white color here and kind of just adding into the very beginning leaves here. I start big and work down small, so I work the big details first. Then you can even take some of this color here, the lighter green color, and work your way into, I'm going to even use a slightly smaller brush, work your way into this color here. And sometimes even for this, I like to use maybe even a bigger brush. And I'm thinking about the light. So the light is here. This is the sun. That's the backlight that's hitting all these bushes. So there's really no other light that's hitting the bushes. And I take a darker color and I cut back in to these colors to make the little shapes that I want. And I call this cutting. Just cutting into the colors. You can call it whatever you want. Maybe it has an actual legitimate name that is accepted among most artists or something. But yeah. Anyways, I don't really stick to the norms usually. So what I'm doing here is I'm just grabbing all these different colors and I'm mixing them down. So I mix the lighter color down into this darker color, and I'm thinking about what's the overall shape. Like right here, maybe this is one separate bush right here. Now I'm taking that darker color and I'm cutting back into the lighter color to kind of add the kind of shape. That way it's kind of a shape here. You can kind of see this is like where a bunch of leaves are kind of overlapping. I'm going to take a darker color here now and kind of work up into the lighter color and make this kind of, shape to where you kind of see a bush shape starting to take place here. Take that darker color again, down here, over here rather, and just kind of adding in the overall outline of the bush there. Maybe take a little bit of this brighter color and even a smaller brush now. And sometimes I even like to use my pencil brush if it's a really detailed, and just add a little bit of detail there. Again, let's take this dark brush here. And it's all about adding these little details here and there throughout the bush that's going to give it this kind of painted look and texture. And it's just these little details like this. Detail goes a long, long way, And I heard that say a lot. And when I was first starting to digital paint and just paint in general, that concept, I think, eluded me a little bit, A little detail can go a long way. You can really represent something with just a very little bit of detail and save yourself a bunch of time. Just by doing that now, we already have something that starts to represent what kind of looks like a bush just kind of sticking out there. And a lot of this is going to be covered up, so I'm trying not to get too detailed either, because I'm going to be, I still have the foreground to work in. And sometimes I'll even work out the foreground first before I even start doing this, but I already have kind of an idea what I want the foreground to look like. But I'm going to have a little more detail with this lighter color kind of working its way over here. And again, remember the light is here, so it's coming this way, and this way. And that's why I'm lighting up the tops of these bushes here as it kind of works its way down, and then the sides of some of these bushes here. Let's cut back in with a darker color. And then I'm going to take an even darker color than this here and kind of just work out a couple little places where it's really dense where the bushes are being covered a lot. And those like those little holes and stuff you see inside of bushes that the light's just not reaching it. They're too deep of little holes within the tree, or in this case, foliage of whatever type. So as you can see, it's starting to kind of, resemble something. At this stage here, this is about what you're going to look like. And sometimes it's a little depressing if you're painting, you're not used to this. And I remember when I first started digital painting, I'd get to, points like this and want to just give up and be like, this is just sucking. But if you work and just know the follow the different procedures and know that, okay, the end result is going to look good if I follow the techniques of starting big and working big with big brushes, big details, coming down small, that my end result is going to be really cool. And man, I just can't express that enough how many times I felt like my picture was just not going to turn out and I would give up on it. And then now I can see pictures where it's like, that same thing would happen. And then sometimes I even get that same kind of feeling, but then I'm like, oh, okay, well, wait a minute. I just got to work through this and, follow the technique that I understand and teach even, and then get that end result going. Notice this is on a new layer over here. And I'm just kind of laying down some sort of tree in the foreground now here. Now it's going to be a lot silhouetted because, you know, um, let's see, I don't know what kind of tree branch I want here. Maybe another little one here. Anyway, it's going to be a lot silhouetted because it's in the foreground and most of the light is in the background. Now maybe there's something, lighting up this tree, but most of it is in the background there. Now it's very brown in color right now, and that's typically not the color it's going to be. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to lock transparency. Now, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use my airbrush tool on normal combine mode. Big brush right here, use a really dark black color. And I'm going to kind of just really, I want most of all this to be kind of really dark, especially down here where the light's not going to hit as much. But notice I left some of that up there to be a more lighter color. And then I might even take a red or something and maybe kind of start pushing the red, just hitting the edges here. Now you can also use the combine mode and maybe try a shortcut and see if this works using like either add glow or soft light or overlay, and then kind of just hit the hot spots where the sun is coming behind and really hitting the tree like so. There's really not over there, but kind of here where it hits the most, and that gives you like a quick shortcut. And then you come back to your regular brush here and start taking these different colors. Take the brown here, this kind of brown red darker color, and start adding in here and just start cutting into this. We know on this side here we're going to have most of the darkness, and it's going to work its way over there. So I'm just going to kind of make this part the darkest and add little details like little lumps and things like that that you'd see represented as bark. But I simplify all this. Usually whenever you're doing any kind of painting, you really want to simplify details. Like I said, little detail goes a long way. And so I can just kind of add a couple little squigglies like that, and then take this other color and kind of work in from there, work into the dark color, work the dark color into the other color. And sometimes I'll even take my actual inking brush and I'll just use that, and I'll just pull these different colors. I'm grabbing that darker color now, grabbing this kind of medium color. Oops, no, we need a more medium color here. Kind of add some of that back in there. We can always come back in and fade some of this if we want to as well. It doesn't have to be this detailed. That is this sharp is what I mean, as this brush makes it out to be. This brush really makes it really, really, hard detail, and we don't have to have it be like that. We can come in and make it much more softer. And I'll show you how to do that in just a second, but I just want to add a lot more to it. Now I'm going to take this off and kind of change some of the outside shape here. I kind of want a little more lumps. Making sure to use the color though that is there on the outside. And maybe I should have thought about this before I did that cool trick with the glow of the brush, but it's alright. It's like little knots and things like that. Take this kind of color over here, and this kind of color here is going to be much more soft, more blue, because it's the bluer part of the sky. And so this is going to be like a little knot, and then I'm going to kind of fill in some of that with darkness around there, but some of the outside of the knot will be hit with light, and just kind of add a little bit of details here to show. Sometimes just add a couple little dots even go a long way, little lines, little dots within this to add that texture. And notice it's starting to look more and more like a painting, even though I'm using an ink brush right now. So I'm using a straight pen basically, as if I'm drawing, painting with a pen. That's what I'm basically doing right now. And it goes a long way. And you can think about it when you're drawing with paints with an actual paintbrush. It's a very unless you're using like a really watery type brush, then what you're putting down on the page or on the canvas is going to be very more like it's not going to be like how like this brush works. You're not going to get a brush that works like this, really. It's not going to be that light. It's going to be just straight. The color you use is the color you use. It's not going to be very transparent. Now you can thin it down and make it transparent, but typically what you're going to be painting with is something that's not very transparent. And so, yeah, the ink brush is actually a pretty good representation of that, or the pencil brush. Or other paint brushes like actual oil paints, things like that. You can use different oil brushes. The oil paint brush, for example, works fine. You can really just decide and pick what brushes you think work best for you. This might be a better brush to use rather than the ink brush, when you're doing some of these details, because it really does, add them in. I like the brush sometimes when I want pinpoint details, though. And as you can see, that's starting to look like, a painting, and it's kind of resembling reality a little bit. I'm going to add a little bit of this green highlight into the tree there. I like adding cool colors into my painting. And to me, that's what I think really makes a painting stand out, is you can add all these kind of cool colors that you don't see maybe they're there actually in the photo if you really analyze it, like blow it up in Photoshop, take a photo and blow it up in Photoshop, but the brain doesn't really register all these different colors that are there. And if you kind of exaggerate them, with painting, then you really make them there, even though they wouldn't normally be that visible to the eye. Like I'm adding a lot of this kind of darker blue in here, and this might not be visible to the eye at all if I were to take a photo of something like this, a scene like this. But I can add that in there and make it come out more so that everyone sees it that much more, even though it's not really, well, it's there, but it's not there this much. And so I'm exaggerating. You're kind of taking reality and you're exaggerating reality. And it really, I think, is very cool. And it adds this kind of, surrealism to painting. And I think, to me, that's the most cool thing about painting, is that's the kind of paintings I like, is the one that takes reality and kind of starts, bending it. Now, right now, it's not looking too realistic yet. We can add more and more realism as we go along. But, here, this is a good, definite, base start here. And then you can actually zoom in on some of this detail. And if you see this is a little bit too hard of lines and work here, then you can like zoom in with this paintbrush, this oil brush, or even the watercolor, transparent watercolor. I like that one a lot. And you come in here and you can kind of start blending, these colors together and blend these details together some more to where it's not as hard. And this is going to change the way it looks overall, the detail. If you don't want that many hard brush strokes in your work. But honestly, if you look at a lot of even paintings up close, it depends on the style of the painting, though. What kind of style they're going for and what kind of style they're painting in. You'll notice that a lot of the work will be like this, just very simple up close. When you get really up close to it, it's very, very simple. It's not very detailed. The lines are just individual brush strokes, and you can actually see those brush strokes on there. And it's not like up close, it just doesn't have the level of detail as it does when you're looking at the picture from a little bit of ways. Now we can add more yellow and stuff to this after we have the leaves. I like to add the leaves in first, and then I'll make the tree represent the light as it's shining through more. So now we got to add all the foliage to the foreground. And I'm going to take the same kind of dark color here. I'm going to add it over here. And I'm going to start with the ink brush just kind of laid in, or you can use a pencil. And just use a big pencil brush to lay in the basic shape. And so this is going to be kind of like a bush that comes in the foreground here. And this is going to be the darkest part of the bush, and it kind of comes out like that. Just kind of touching it, making little circles. And I'm going to take that kind of green color here and kind of bring it in. Maybe add more of a saturated green. And right now it's just little circles, little dots. So I'm going to come in, we can take that and cut back into it with different colors. You're going to see how we're going to get different shapes. Then we start making our brush smaller. And if we just have, this shape at first, it kind of looks weird and it doesn't really look like, a bush. But as we continue to work these colors back and forth into each other, we're going to start to see something that resembles more and more. Go back to this oil brush here and get even smaller detail. And as we kind of start working on these, but you want something to start with. You can even start with like a texture brush or even a texture itself. You can like start by just throwing in an actual texture from a photo, and then just start taking that texture and working it around and blending the colors together like I'm doing now, and adding little bits here and there. And so I'm keeping in mind that, hey, I'm dealing with a three-dimensional object here. Even though these are bundles of leaves, it's not flat. And that's definitely something you want to keep in mind, is that we're not dealing with a flat object here. We're dealing with something that has a lot of shape, three-dimensionality to it. I got to think, what kind of tree is this? What kind of leaves are they? And how do those leaves look when they're farther away, when they're not right up close? Because our brain, what we tend to do is we tend to think about things. And actually, I don't know if you've seen that new show, Brain Games, whatever, but it's really cool. And it goes through a lot of stuff that really can help artists too. It's the way our brain works is we tend to like think about things a certain way. So when we think about trees and stuff and bushes, we think about, hey, trees and bushes, they have all these leaves on them. And we tend to want to, draw all that little detail. Like we want to zoom in maybe and actually come here and look. When we zoom in, this looks like scribbling, right? But it's a start. It's all this scribble starts to represent and look like tree, like actual foliage and bushes. And you can even think about it in a cartoon way, but that's kind of what you're doing. It's simplifying almost to a cartoon way. But anyway, so when we come in here, we might think, okay, well, the kind of leaves are on this tree look like this. They're like little round leaves like this, and we can come in here and start drawing all those little round leaves. Now, of course, this far away, they have to be much smaller than that, so we have to use a smaller brush. But we're going to go, okay, all the leaves, they kind of look like this on this tree, and they're kind of bundled together like this, let's say. And so that's how our brain sees things. And so we're going to want to come in here and be tempted to actually draw and paint all this, all these different details. And then another branch comes off, and you have leaves that kind of have some shape like that. We don't want to draw all that detail, but it's unnecessary. We don't need to do that to capture the idea that, hey, there's leaves there. And so one example would be like in a cartoon. Let's make a new layer for this real quick. You might have a bush or something like in Family Guy in the background, and the bush might kind of have a shape like this here. And then they go, okay, now that's the basic shape of the bush. Let's have the highlight, and the highlight is coming in here. Let's say it's coming from that side, and it kind of has shape like this, and you can kind of see they just represent a few of the edges of the leaves like this, right? And that becomes the highlight area. Just kind of trying to draw that in there real quick. Right, so they might actually have that shape of the tree, but it's very simplified. But you can still see that, hey, that represents like a bush. You can kind of see that's a bush. I know I've done that very quickly, but get the idea. And you can even take a darker color here for, maybe not that dark, but darker color here. And this can represent some of the shadows, and maybe the shadow kind of looks like that, but it still has the shape, basic shape of leaves and bunches up together. And this right here would be a really good place to kind of branch out and have some of those shapes happen. And you can take that and turn it to a painting by just working off that more cartoon shape. But that's how you're thinking about, you're breaking things down into those types of shapes. And so that's why I like to be zoomed away. That way I'm focusing more on the shapes and what is the person going to be looking at when they look on it. If they look at this painting on a wall, for example, this is what they're going to see. They're going to be looking at the whole thing. They're not going to be looking at this one isolated area all zoomed in. They might get that close to the painting and do that. Then they'll see your individual brush strokes and that. You're like, hey, this doesn't look anything like a bush really up close and personal, but when you look at it from this distance, it starts looking like a bush. Now this right here is getting a little too detailed, I think, personally. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a larger brush here. And I'm going to just kind of start refining, not refining, I'm going to even go back in more and make this even more simplified. So simplifying, not refining. I'm actually simplifying right now. So I'm going to just kind of add some of this shape here to what looks like the basic shape of foliage, like the outer edge as they mix together, you know, what shapes do the leaves make. And I might even come in here a little bit closer and maybe take a smaller brush and go, okay, I know that the basic shape of the leaves is kind of like that. Like that's how this bush is going to look. I'm not sure what kind of bush this is, but I know I've seen them a lot. Where the basic shape of the foliage is kind of like that on the edge. It has a lot of like little 3 leaves and 4 leaf shapes you can see. And all the outer edge here, a lot of it's going to be, you know, highlighted in a lighter color. So I'm going to kind of come in here and highlight this. I'm going to make all this a lighter color actually. And I think this is the part in painting people get stuck on too much, is they try to go for detail right away. And I had that problem, you know, when I first started digital painting and painting in general actually. I don't do a lot of acrylic or oil painting really, but you know, I have done my fair share before I ever even started going digital. And so, you know, I had a good idea, but still, with digital painting, I'd still had the temptation to want to zoom in all the time and get all that kind of detail instead of just, you know, painting from out here, which is a really, I think, invaluable lesson tool to paint from out here and really get down the shapes, you know. And like, for example, here, I'm going to go a little bit bigger brush, but I want that kind of overall shape of just what the, you know, bushes are going to look like here. I could even paint this on a separate layer if I wanted to. Like that, and I might have a little hole where a little bit of light kind of peeks through right there. And I'm just keeping the basic idea in mind, and then I'm going to refine that by using a smaller brush and coming in here and actually painting some individual leaves, you know, that is not actual leaves, but the way that these leaves look like when they're all bunched together in their simplified form. So I'm imagining what's the simplified shape that these leaves make when they're on the very edge. When you just see the edge of the, imagine the silhouette, the edge of the tree. If you were to silhouette it, what does that look like? And that's kind of what I'm representing there. Right, and then we know that, you know, some of these leaves here on the edge are going to be hit with highlight. Right, so all the edge is actually going to be, I definitely want to make sure this is a little bit darker of a green though than the background, than the midground. Rather not background, it's midground right there. Because I don't want it to blend together, I want to keep them separate. And the oils is kind of mixing these colors together, adding a kind of really cool effect here. I'm just lightly touching some of these areas, kind of the brush is kind of blending those colors together. You can also take the watercolor brush and give you more blended, so you can really get that kind of blended look on some of the edges there. I'm going to take this kind of darker color now. Now I'm going to take something that's blue over here, this kind of darker blue color, and kind of work it into my bushes. Definitely don't want, you know, like monochromatic. You don't want all one color. You want a lot of different color variations in your painting. And what made one of the really cool things I miss in Photoshop that they don't have in Manga Studio, and I hope they come out with it, is the color changing, so that you can go to your brush. Let's say this one here, you'd have to actually go to your tool settings to change the well, actually, really quick, just this one you'll notice the combine mode is not, you can't use it for the watercolor transparency brush. And so let's say I'll go to this brush, for example, and I want to change this to color mode. And there isn't a color mode in Manga Studio 5 like there is in Photoshop. You can get a similar effect though if you use something like soft light. And soft light is usually how I would change colors anyway in Photoshop usually. But so now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just lightly touch around to add color variation. So I'm going to add a little bit of blue, for example. And just very lightly touch. I'm going to actually lock transparency here. This means I won't get out of this layer here. So I'm going to stay within this layer. Just kind of add a little bit of this kind of blue here and there. Then I'm going to take a little bit of green and add it into the tree. I'm going to take yellow now, even add a little bit of yellow all on the edge here as well. And notice how it's kind of mixing with a lot of the other colors that I just laid down. Add a little bit of red, a little more blue, a little more green, a little purple, back to yellow, really bright. Now I'm going to really add a bright color here. And notice that really changes everything. And then I come in here and I can take some of those color variations and start working with them to my advantage. But before we do that, I had the basic idea laid down. Now what I want to do is make another layer maybe, and this will be my leaf layer. Just in case I decide to change this and the other one, I recommend doing this on another layer. We can start with pencil, for example. I mean, you can really just start with any brush you want to start laying in the detail. Honestly, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to kind of use maybe one of these kind of middle colors here. It's not quite a really bright green or, yellowish. It's somewhere in between for now. And some of the branches are also going to fit on this layer. And let's see, I think that some of the leaves might come in front of the tree, but most of them are going to be behind the tree trunk. So I'm going to go like this for now. And now I'm just going to add the actual globs of tree leaves. So let's say the ultimate leaf on this tree, if I were to draw it in detail or something, let's say this was a branch that came down somewhere in here like this, and the leaf had another branch come off like that. Really, I'm trying to make it thinner than it's supposed to be here. Let's go with a smaller, something like this. And the leaves, individual leaves kind of look like this, let's say, on the tree. They have a shape kind of like that. And they kind of grow in different bunches. So sometimes there'll be a bunch of them here. All this shape right here kind of going like that. I'm going to use a bigger brush and just kind of try to simulate that. And then a bunch of those leaves kind of come together and they just overlap. And then you have the edges of some of them like that. And so that would be the ultimate, maybe there's some smaller ones on here as well. That's the ultimate shape that I have, that I end up with, something like that. Then I come in, I can add the light and the dark and shadow and things like that. And so let's say I'm going to go with this kind of reddish brown color first. And just kind of add maybe some of the thin branches coming off that I might actually see here and there. I'm going to use this brush. I have more control over making thin. That is the paint brush, the inking brush here. And maybe we have a few like twig-like branches coming down here. We can kind of see them, here and there through in between where the leaves are all going to be. All right, then I'm going to go back in and add my actual shapes here. And maybe size 50 brush here. I'm going to come right back over and just add the blobs of shape. That's going to be my leaves. And something like that right there. I'm kind of focusing more on the outside and how the outside of the leaves work. I kind of want this, to have a cool centralized hole here. So right now I'm just kind of thinking about maybe some leaves are overlapping here, making this individual bunch right there. Couple other ones are, sticking out by themselves. No, that looks dumb. We're going to still come back in and add some darkness as well to some of these leaves. So just right now I'm just adding the main bulk shape that I want to see. And here, these leaves are mostly going to be dark, so I'm going to make them dark right now. I'm not going to worry about, if they're going to be a mid-color leaf, having a lot of highlight on them and stuff, then you might do like I'm doing over there. But over here, I know these leaves are going to be all pretty much dark. There might be a little bit of highlight leaf here, but for the most part, the color we're going to see is this more darker color. you see a couple of leaves over here sticking out, and a bunch of leaves all right in here. Again, I'm using that technique where I'm cutting back and forth into to kind of add the detail. Something like that. And I want a bunch more leaves up here. Maybe this branch here has a bunch of leaves coming off like that, all bunched together. And I want some more holes in there, and then maybe some leaves up here. And maybe some of these leaves will be in the foreground, more in the foreground, so they're going to take on this darker color here. That is, the light isn't really touching them. Like that, and maybe some midground colors here. This way you can kind of see some individual detail and individual leaf shapes coming through to play here. Again, if you add too much of one color, just cut back into it. And you can also go back in with a smaller brush. You know, I like to start big. Make your details, you know, worry about your details later. Start with these big brushes. You know, you add in all these like major shapes, and then you come back in. You work in smaller brushes to add in more detail. Start with, my general rule of thumb is I start with the biggest possible brush possible to actually make what I'm trying to make. If it's, you know, if I can't get the, you know, the small details that I want, I can't make it look like the shape I want to make it look like. It's just and I know it's too big. So I use the biggest possible brush I can to achieve the ultimate shape, basic shapes I'm going for. Okay, something like that, and then we can start adding other. Right now I'm not worried about too much about color variation and stuff like that yet. I'm more just focusing on getting the actual shapes in here. Some of these shapes will be more pronounced in the dark shadows than others because the light isn't going to be reaching them as much. Something like that. You know, using little dots and little shapes like that helps a lot to help get a base for what you want. And that's the base for what I want. Once I have the base for what I want, then I can come in and I can start adding, you know, the details and stuff like that. But I kind of want to change all the color. And here's a cool trick. I kind of already showed you a little bit by taking this, using soft light or even glow, and then going over this layer with this color here to really add that sunshine. Using a bright kind of yellow color, we can kind of start showing the sun coming right through, you know, some of the edges here, and how it changes the color to that. And I can even go a little bit of pink maybe, and just show how it's changing. And what I forgot to do actually though, let's go back. I forgot to lock the transparency in this layer. That way I can only paint on what appears on that layer. I'm going to start with an actual red color, and let's go with glow real quick and see what happens if I do this kind of, let's do a really red color. You can see that kind of really starts to add that cool color shift there. Then we'll go to overlay and yellow. Just add it to the, I'm just trying to touch the edges now of some of this to kind of change the colors of it. And then come back in, and I can even, you know, add some of the green if I think it would show up there. And this is where you have to use your own judgment, what you know about color and light and color theory and things like that. Maybe a little bit of green would still show through the foliage in some places in here, but it's going to be overpowered, you know, by that yellow, this yellow color here. Okay, now I can come in, I can start changing the shapes a little bit. Using these colors, I can then drop my brush size down and really start kind of refining the edges of some of this, of some of the leaves and things like that, and even some of the detail as some of these holes, you know, I might have some holes and stuff that show through. like this here. Again, I'm cutting back into each color, kind of breaking up like that and showing these different shapes that might show up. I'm going to take it and I'm just going to cut right into the yellow here. And some of the, the white is going to bleach or blanch out some of the other shapes here. That is, if you take a photo, and taking photos is definitely a good way to start learning, how color works and shadows and light and things like that. What you're going to see is if you take a photo of something like this, take a tree, have the sun right behind it, that being the main light source. Take a picture of it, and you notice a lot of the branches that would normally be really dark and black end up turning out to almost this kind of reddish orange color, and not brown at all. And then you'll see like other parts will be really blended together and become green. Like this whole chip here might come more green. And so I can click on that layer. And one of the cool things with the edges, you'll see that, especially the sun, is it really hits the edge here. I'm going to use a soft brush and use normal. Is it really starts to kind of fade away the edges. It kind of like it bleeds into it, basically, is what happens. Make sure it's working. And I don't think it is. Maybe I'm on the wrong layer. Oh, that's right. I gotta be on this layer. And it starts to kind of come in here and just fades the edges to where it becomes almost blurry. You can barely even see any detail at all because it's bleeding right into that color, and that's the kind of effect you get. Maybe take even a bigger brush and just hit it, a couple times like that even. Maybe use a slightly different color for it. Maybe use in this case use like an overlay, and we'll use kind of an orangish color here, and just like slightly go over it a little bit, and then we can go back into normal. Oops, not with normal, you have to use that kind of white color. Then you come back and add some of this bright yellow in here, the very edges, where you think there might still be some detail where it's not being overwashed. But you'll notice a lot of this here, this detail here is going to be overwashed with the white. All the edges there just going to be eaten up. Again, definitely really do try, take a picture of a tree like this sometime with leaves and stuff, and have the sun right behind it, and you're going to see this really cool effect that happens with light. It's really neat how the edges, how it takes over and drastically changes the color of the leaves from green. In reality they're supposed to be green, but they turn into this kind of yellow color. And then especially all these bushes over here, they're going to take that same kind of yellow color. So I'm going to go to that layer, which is not here. That layer down there too is also take a lot of yellow. So I'm going to go ahead and add that soft light mode here and really add this yellow into that background there too as well, because the light is really going to overpower everything. Let's get even lighter like that, and then let's go to this layer now. Let's really add this kind of yellow, and it's going to really affect the edges of this a lot more than when I had it, and really add that yellow and orange. And then at this point here is where you really want to go and just use really saturated colors and come in here and start changing, and maybe even use oil brush here. I'm going to start adding the orange right into some of these leaves on the bush here, and then add this yellow to the edge. And now this is it's basically changing all the colors, and this is where that color changing in Photoshop would really come in handy right now. I can just come in here and just run it right over with orange or yellow, and just it won't destroy anything. Now the soft brush does something similar, but it adds too much sometimes, I guess, saturation, whereas that color brush I was telling you about doesn't do that. I'm going to add some brown, this kind of darker brown color over here. Notice how it looks dark over here, but or yeah, dark over here, but light over here. That's one of the things that you learn what happens with your brain in that TV show. And you can learn other places as well. Just know that TV show, Brain Games, goes into that, why that happens. And it just has to do with the relativity of the colors around it. So when it's around a darker color, then naturally it's going to look, lighter. So over here it looks lighter, but those are the exact same color. This color, and this color, is the exact same color. I know the exact same color because I took this color and painted with it over here. I can grab that color and you can see it's the same color. So even though they're the same color, this one looks darker because it's next to white, a lot of white surrounding it. This one, a lot of darker surrounding it. So that's another thing to keep in mind is the relativeness of colors. When you're painting, they do make a difference. So now I'm coming in here and I'm just adding, little details. So this is where you really either have fun or you get bored. Some people really like details. Some people, like me, don't really like it so much. I mean, I like it to a point, but I like, more of the process of the creating itself than I do adding all that detail. One thing I'm going to do with this tree branch here is I'm going to take that airbrush color, or the airbrush, I'm going to go to soft light. I want to add green. I'm going to add a dark color for now. And actually I'm going to just do normal mode because it's just try to change it but not destroy too much of the detail. And I want it more desaturated. Kind of add a little bit of there we go. It's kind of almost an orange. Something like that there, because you're going to see like at the top of this tree, it's not going to be totally, changed to that color yet. Then come back here and I can add some of this orange back into the tree just a little bit where I think it might show up. And then add some of this other color in here, some of this brown, just to add some of the details. Most of the detail here is going to be lost though, so I'm going to add it. I'm going to make it to where it's just kind of overlay these colors like this together and just kind of hint at that detail, but don't add too much of it. Maybe you can use a bigger brush to where you don't get caught up too much in the detail here. You can kind of keep the detail more vague, just kind of cutting into those colors. You kind of see there's some detail there, and it still has that kind of representation of three-dimensionality. Something like that there. Add some more of this blue. I really like that blue in the trunk over here and the cool side of the tree. So you have this kind of cool side over here and more of the warm side over here. And as you can see, it starts to take shape and actually look like, a scene, a painting. And it starts to look like something that might exist in real life. And all it takes is just a little bit of detail, goes a long way. And I might, again, add some leaves maybe to the foreground that's covering the branches here, because you don't want just it all in the background, because we do know that some leaves would come and hang over in the foreground. And so I can just take some of these colors, let's say even these darker leaf colors here, and just kind of make sure this is off. Paint them in here like this. This is some of the foliage in the very, very foreground, so it's not going to be as affected by the light as much. Kind of like that there. And then I'm going to take a smaller brush and just add some of these lighter color details, to some of the edge of the foliage here. You want it to still look 3D. You don't want it to look too flat, so you always want to add a little bit of light. Unless it's a total silhouette, then, and that does happen in reality, where you get a total silhouette where it's completely flat. But I might even take some of this darker color here and just kind of show where the light is really, really not reaching. Add that kind of three-dimensionality. It really does help also to look at some photo references, because you don't want to be just totally shooting in the dark. I mean, you can, if you know a lot about what the subject you're trying to paint, but sometimes it's necessary to look at, something to get an idea of what you want to do with it. You can have a light flare in here. There's all kinds of cool stuff you can do, but this is really the basis right here. And from here, it's just all about coming in and taking that. Once you're at this point here, you're pretty much done. Now it's just coming in, adding as much detail as you do or do not want. That's really all that happens at this stage. It's all about detail work now. we're not really worried about, I might add a couple more branches in here that are kind of coming off like that. Maybe there's a little bit of leaves and they're being bleached out like that. But yeah, that's really all you're doing now is you're just adding detail. And I think I'm on the wrong layer too. That's all right. At this point, you could even mix your layers all together. You've already done the major work that you need to do with those brushes on these layers to add that kind of cool effect you wanted to add. So now you can go ahead and mix all the layers together even and add this kind of cool effect. So I'm hoping you guys are finding this helpful and useful. Now I'm just taking all these shapes here and I'm just kind of mixing them together, the different colors that I had made those basic blobs with over here. You see all this right here, it just looks like circles and blobs. It doesn't really look like much of a leaves or anything. So now I'm just going to come in and add a little bit of detail, some edge of leaves shapes of what I know the leaves on this tree look like. So I'm just going to add and how they bundle together, the edge. So really when you study trees, study how they look individually, like not individually, not each individual leaf. That's not so important. What's important is how they look all bundled up together. What is the overall outside shape, and also looking at comic books, how they simplify and represent leaves. Pay attention to the background of shows like Family Guy and things like that, and see how they simplify leaves, and look at some of your favorite comic books and how they might do it. It's really cool sometimes how different people in different mediums simplify things, and everyone can do it differently. And you can also come with your own way. How do you see it when you simplify a tree and you see the edges of the leaves? What does it look like to you? Another way to do that, if you're having a hard time seeing that difference, how do you see it? You might have a hard time seeing the simplified shape. Try taking a silhouette of the tree, or look for some pictures online, type in silhouette of oak tree, so that way you know what kind of tree it is, and then look at an actual picture of an oak tree and then compare them together and go, okay, so when I have a silhouette, this is what the silhouette would just have all the edges over here of the tree, right? And so you look at the edge of that tree in the silhouette, and how does that look compared to the actual tree itself? And you can see they look different, because one, you're focusing on all the details of all the leaves overlapping each other. The other one's a silhouette, just the outline of the leaves. And you can see the shapes they make. A lot of these different shapes here that I've come up with. And I might go look at some more references if I wanted to really refine this and go, okay, what's more of the actual outside shapes here that I should be focusing on. And I'm trying to cut into some of that detail now and change the overall outside shape. Make this really deep yellow color. Right. And I really don't like that shape there. I just want to kind of break it up and change it a little bit, something like that. Alright, so there we have it. And at this point, really, it's all about how much more detail do you want to add to the painting. Really, that's all it comes down to. Is all about how much detail do you want your final piece to have, and it also depends on whether or not you're going to print it. Because if you're going to print it, this one's drawn a decent size. It's not too big, but if you're going to be printing it, I recommend painting as a really large size first. That way, if you do just add details like this, now if I zoom in, you can see all this, and I'd have to go in here. I want to print this and really refine all this detail so that it looks really nice, and you can see the individual brush strokes look really cool. But you believe it or not, you can leave it looking just like this if it was big enough to when you print it, you would kind of see something like that there. And then let's just go ahead and go like this. You can also do a practice printout and see. But if you paint it really big on a really big canvas, what happens is when you print it out, you reduce the size first before you print it out. So let's say you're going to print it out at 8 by 11, right? Then work huge. Work at like 40 inches by whatever 8 by 11 would go to. 40 by 60 inches, wherever it's going to be. So you're going to be printing out 8 by 11. So you're painting in here at 30 by like 80 inches. So it's like so many times bigger. And you can paint this kind of detail here. And then you take this image and you go into Edit. And then you go to Change canvas size, or I actually want to change image resolution. Right now I'm at 350 image resolution, and let's go to inches here. It's not very big, it's only 4 by 2. So this is for demonstration purposes. But let's suppose though that this was huge, 50 inches by 80 inches. I reduce it to 8 by 11, click OK, and what's going to happen is all that what didn't look like detail when you're all zoomed in like that, looks all weird, it's going to look like this now. Boom, like that. And when you print it out, it's going to look like that. So it'll look really cool. And so that's one little cool trick you can do with speed painting to where you don't have to get so much into detail. If you're like me and you just don't really care to paint too much detail, it gets kind of boring if you get too detailed with the painting, then that would be a cool trick you can use. Just add a little bit of this bright color here. All right, folks, so I think that's pretty much it. At this stage, and then you might want to add something else to the picture just to make it a little more interesting. Whenever I paint nature, I like to add something else to it. Like I don't like just painting themeless type paintings. I want at least a tree maybe to look like something. So I might paint the tree looking like an octopus or a woman or something like that. Or I might throw a person in this picture here. Like maybe there's a person right here, a person somewhere here, over here, or right here, and they're propped up against a tree smoking a cigarette. I want some sort of theme, some sort of idea, something to carry throughout my picture personally. Now I'm going to go ahead and maybe a squirrel eating a nut, for example, right here, or something, birds flying, and just something else besides just this foliage and tree. I'd want some sort of animals or something there. But yeah, that's just me. I'm going to go ahead and flatten all this out so we can go to layer and maybe just go to merge visible layers. Now I got one layer here. I'm going to take my airbrush again. I'm going to go to overlay. I'm going to take this kind of bright yellow color. I just want to kind of bring out some more, maybe even with white. I'm destroying too much information there. So that I don't mind destroying because I know that's how that would really look anyway. Something like so, I think. And then maybe even take it and just go to normal airbrush, and just kind of add in that yellow color right into the edges of the tree there, where it just kind of it kind of gets a little softer. It's not so hard. Maybe even a kind of brighter orange color even, just on the tree though in this case. I should have left maybe the layer still, and that it looks really cool. And then I'm gonna come back in with a smaller brush here, and I can come back in and pick up these colors with the Alt key and just kind of add some detail back in here if I feel like I lost too much of it. But now with these newer altered colors, so I'm working with different colors now because I altered it with that brush by just lightly going over it and destroying some of the edge that I had there. I'm going to just lightly kind of mix some of these colors together now. Again, that oil brush kind of blends the colors together a little bit, and it's kind of cool the effect it has. Maybe this is a kind of a cool little area of the tree that has a knot in it. And so you kind of see where the highlight reaches out and the knot goes deeper, where it gets a little bit darker like that. And you have that other color coming out more like that, and you have a little bit of highlight depending on where the light's coming from this direction over here. So let's take a little bit of highlight color, just kind of highlight some of the edge there. It kind of shows that side of the knot is lit up more, and so this side would be the part that has the darkest where the light's not hitting, like that. It's a cool way to kind of add a knot into a tree. Little details like that, because it is more in the foreground and the light is hitting it, would kind of show up. And I'm thinking more of this orangish color would be all across this area here. One way I can try to darken that up is using that orange color, taking the airbrush, go to overlay mode, and just kind of put it in like that. And I wish there was also a desaturation brush. So there's not a saturation brush to just like desaturate what you just put in there. A quick way to just desaturate everything. And so there's different ways you can do it. You can try to use like a desaturated color and just kind of put in there, but subtract still saturates. It's the natural nature, so you could just use normal and just take a more desaturated color that you're working with there and try not to destroy too much of the information that you've already laid down. That's what's really cool about the desaturated brush in Photoshop is you can sit there and desaturate stuff. I'm gonna add a little bit of detail back here that I've lost. I don't want too much. I do want some blurriness though. But anyway, so you can come in and add some of that back. Add some desaturation back into your image where you want it without destroying information. So it'll keep all the detail there because all it is desaturating the colors. It's not actually, going over colors like the normal brush does. Come back, cut in that line here, make it kind of broke up. You can also take this line and kind of cut into this blue and break it up like that as well. Hope you guys can see that on the screen. The blue color shows up. Take this brown, you can kind of make a line. For example, take this dark line here, make a dark line like this, and then take these lighter colors and just kind of break it up and cross in between so it kind of breaks up the line there and it shows up like that. There's really cool techniques like that you can use. All right, so there it is, folks. That's the cool finished piece. And I might, paint a squirrel or something into it. I know this is just, for tutorial purposes only, and so it's not like a finished piece or something like that, but still, my perfectionism in me wants to add something to this. It wants to add a person. I like people in my pictures, but an animal would be kind of cool too. And yeah, anyway, so thanks for watching, guys. And so these are kind of the more of the, in line of the, I don't always have these really super long ones like a full painting like this here. And this was the full speed painting we just did in an hour. So that's how long it took me to paint this in real time. I don't always do full real-time videos like that where it's always an hour-long lesson on my paid channel, but I have a lot of videos, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour long, sometimes even 2 hours long, that cover different subjects. And one of the subjects I'm going to be covering soon in my paid channel is an entire mini course on how to draw the figure, an entire mini course on taking anatomy and simplifying some anatomy tricks, and then also getting feedback from people and then like going from there. So yeah, the paid channel is really cool. It's only $1.99 a month, and I'm constantly updating that and trying to keep obviously the paid fans happy there. So if you can't afford to get my courses, that's a good alternative where you're paying very little a month to have constant videos coming your way, and you can give feedback and say, hey, I really would like you to make a video of this, and I really pay attention to the feedback on that channel because there's not a whole lot of subscribers. And I want to make sure that they're all happy. And as it grows and gets bigger, I'm still going to, cater to the individuals there. Like, hey, I'd really like to see, something on animals, or I'd really like to see a video covering this particular subject if you could. And then I'll come out with a video of that subject. So it's going to cover all kinds of cool subjects on there and have a bunch of little mini courses. And I'm constantly updating and adding to it as I do the free channel. So don't feel left out if you're in the free channel. Like, oh, we're not going to get, our stuff anymore. No, of course you are. I'm going to still always put on free videos for you guys. That's never going to change. It's just a certain nature. The nature of videos that are on the paid channel are a little different than the ones that are on the free channel. The ones on the free channel, I try to get what the majority of people want, which is usually snappy, shorter videos that don't go into a whole bunch of detail about theory and stuff like that. Whereas the paid channel people there are more, they want more of a course, more of a learning. They want that kind of deeper knowledge that is going to come through those videos. All right, so thanks for watching, guys. Another thing to watch out for is my book, How to Draw Awesome Figures on Amazon. It is a best-selling book now on Amazon for figure drawing. And so yeah, it's doing really well, and thank you guys for all who purchased it. And for those that don't like the digital version, there is a printed version now. So, and it's not much more money. I think it comes out to $16. I can't remember, $13, something like that. That's all they set the prices for that kind of stuff, so I can get some profit. I actually get less profit, believe it or not, from the paper book than I do from the Kindle version. So the digital version is only like $7. I make more profit off that one than I do for like the $13 book, whatever it costs for the paperback version. So if you want to support me the most, what's to make me the most money and support me the most is getting the digital version. But I have no problem if you want the physical version, get it. It's awesome. That way you can have that physical book in your hand and look at it whenever you want, put it in your bookshelf, whatever. So yeah, it's How to Draw Awesome Figures on Amazon by Neil Fontaine. Definitely check it out if you want some reference book. It's a really good companion to some of my courses, like how to draw figure courses, because now you can like look back and go, okay, what was that how do I divide this part again, you know, that we don't have to go back in the video and try to find out where it was. Also, you'll notice in my latest course on how to use Manga Studio, Master Manga Studio 5, you'll notice I break it down into little videos that deal with each individual subject, and all my courses are going to be that way so that you can find the subject you're looking for easier. So if I make a course on how to draw heads again, like a new updated course on that with all the latest and greatest techniques that I use and stuff now, I would show first like how to draw the head in general. That'd be like its own, you know, the construction of the head would be its own video, its own lesson. You know, then when I get into how to draw the eyes, that would be its own lesson. And I might even break that down into sub videos, how to draw the pupil, how to draw the iris, things like that. That way, you know, right where on Udemy, you can just go to the lessons and go, I can't remember what he said about drawing the eye when you're drawing the iris, or when you're drawing the pupil, or when you're drawing the retina, or when you're drawing the eyelid. You know, you can just go right to that part of the lesson, click on eyelid, and go, bam, there it is, and you can just watch a couple minutes and you got it. So I'm going to try to break it up in that way because I think it makes it easier to reference. But nonetheless, video is a lot harder to reference than books. So I'm going to try to come up with more books on different subjects so that they're kind of like companions to courses. You know, courses will give you a lot more detail than the book, but the book will still teach you a lot, and it's also a good reference. You can just quickly, you know, flip through the pages and go, okay, that's what I wanted to know again. I kind of was rusty on that part. I kind of forgot that how he does this particular part of the eye, or you know, what was the way to draw a nose again? What's that one nose you drew? I really liked it, and it's bam, it's right there. It's in the book, and it's easy to find. So let me know what book you guys like to see next to go with a companion of my courses. Right now, I got, you know, how to draw awesome figures. I was thinking about maybe the next book should be, and that one does have some cool anatomy pictures in it. But I was thinking maybe one on heads. You know, how to draw awesome heads and faces. So, and hair. Maybe make that all part of one book or something. So yeah. Anyway, how to draw hair will be a cool short course to do as well. Um, yeah, that's it. I don't know if I can blab on about anything else. So I want to make sure I just covered everything that I can think about covering at the end of the video, since people seem to get mad when I talk about that kind of stuff in the middle of the video somewhere. And if I tack it on the end, it seems to make people more happy. And I really want to make everyone happy. I know I can't make everyone happy. That's impossible. But I do want to make as much people happy as I can with my products and with my free videos and paid videos. All right, thank you guys for watching. Again, if you like this kind of lesson where it's more of a full-on lesson in real time and really goes down and teaches a lot of nitty-gritty stuff, then definitely want to subscribe to my paid channel for only $1.99 a month. If you're unfamiliar with it or where it's at, it's easy to find. Just go to my channel's homepage. And so let me do that for you. Let's say you're here and then you go to my channel. I'm just going to go to channel here real quick. That's not how to do it. I have to go like this. No, I have to go like this. And then go to my channel. So let's say you're at my channel right now. If you're on any of my videos, all you have to do to get to my channel is click on my name, Learn to Draw. So let's say you're on this video right here and you're watching this video. Then you just click on Learn to Draw, and that would take you to my channel. Once you're at my channel, you're going to see on the right hand side here, you're going to see my other channels that I have. You just click on this one here, start the free trial for Learn to Draw. I think it gives you either 7 or 14-day free trial to check it out. I have a lot of videos on there already. I'm going to be adding more to it. And so that's how you would sign up if you wanted to become part of the paid for channel. I also have this channel here. I know some people disagree with that. It's really medicine, and that's what I do, is I grow medicine for people. And I've seen the awesome benefits it has for people with cancer, for my girlfriend that suffers from chronic nauseousness, and the doctors don't know why. They run all kinds of tests and they still can't figure it out. They're probably just going to lump it up with something like irritable bowel syndrome and be like, here, take this. And none of that stuff works, though. Anyway, and I've seen it work for like my brother-in-law who has chronic back pain, and they put him on all kinds of meds, and nothing has worked better for him than RSO, Rick Simpson oil, which is a extract of oil from the marijuana plant. Anyway, I've just seen countless people that I know personally that it's helped, and so that's why I decided to become a medical marijuana grower. And this is all about my techniques and how I grow. And then I also have how to create games, which not just how to create games. I show something because I also make video games. I'm coming out with a new video game soon here for the Android phone, so stay tuned for that. I might even make it for Apple. I don't know yet, but definitely it's gonna be an Android phone. It's a really cool, unique game. I'm telling you, it's gonna be the next unique game that's been out there. It's gonna be like the next game, like when let's say Plants vs. Zombies came out. You know, it's like, wow, that's a really cool idea. Or when Bejeweled came out, you know, or when what's another really cool game that came out and everyone's like, wow, this is they're really cool. Sorry about that. I just kind of burped a little bit on mic, I think. That was rude, huh? Maybe I should edit that part out. Um, so if I don't, though, then you know that I had the idea to edit it out. But anyway, it's gonna be that kind of uniqueness brought to gaming. Yeah, it's gonna be awesome. So also, I also show that, but I also show in here different tips and tricks that I learned as a gamer to help me play certain games better, and what things help me play better. And then also my girlfriend, she's really good at games, and she beats me even on Call of Duty, which is amazing sometimes. I mean, sometimes I win, sometimes she wins. She's really good at Call of Duty. She goes online and just kicks butt, and it's funny because no one knows she's a female, and sometimes she'll talk on mic and they're like, "Oh my God, there's a female." Of course, a lot of the guys freak out. It's a female, it's a female, and try to pick up on her and stuff, and she's like, whatever. But yeah, so she'll be playing games on there too and giving some of her tips and techniques. So we haven't really worked much on this lately, but we're going to start putting a lot more time after that, and she's really going to start putting a lot more time effort into it. Showing her playing different video games and showing, hey, that girls can actually kick ass at video games. And then a couple of the channels you'll see here soon is going to be my meditation, guided meditation, and hypnosis channel. And so I'm gonna dedicate a full channel to showing, to all the guided meditations and stuff like that. You've seen some of them on this here. And then another one we're both coming out together. We'll both be making videos for mostly her, but I'll be making some too, and I'll be guiding her and helping her with them. Is ASMR videos. So those videos that really relax you and stuff. I have at least one on this channel right now. If you type in ASMR or just ASMR, and I just call it ASMR, but I think that's most people pronounce it. To do that, you just go to About, and then you go to you go to this little search icon and you just type ASMR, ASMR, and bam, you'll see the video will show up, and you click on it and watch it. And it's just me drawing, but and playing with my eraser, my kneaded eraser, but I create that feeling for a lot of people. And some people just get asthma watching my channel in general, just watching me draw or whatever, and that's kind of cool. But yeah, so that channel is going to be dedicated to that, and using the different techniques that I know that give me asthma, and putting it all on that channel. Really bunch of really cool asthma type stuff. So that's stuff to come in the future. And of course, the how to draw environments is coming soon. I guess this was kind of a taste of that. Seeing the tree and stuff, but we're gonna do more like background stuff for concept art and comic books. That's gonna be my main focus for the environment course on how to draw backgrounds, mostly for comics and for concept art. And then also how to really think about backgrounds in comic books, because you don't want them to be too complex and overbearing for everything. And really oftentimes you don't have much of a background in comic books. It's really the bigger panels that do. But still, you need to know how to draw that kind of stuff, and knowing perspective and things like that really help. And I'm not going to recover those subjects. I don't think I might do like a really quick thing, a perspective or something, but that's where my other courses come into play, like my how to draw and paint comics, that I go through the basics of form and light and perspective and all that good stuff. So all right, thanks for watching. I know I've talked about a lot of different stuff toward the end here, but that's where people would rather see it or hear it. So all right, thanks.